And I keep up with the rest of that. It's driving me crazy.
Imagine.
I've got too much going on for me to keep up with.
Oh, yeah. And by next week, they're gonna.
Investigation is just what all the. Literally is gonna happen.
Yeah,
Actamundo.
I asked some questions about what was.
Got it scheduled.
I-
I don't feel like people understand. I'm ready. You? We've had the same thing over and over.
Yeah, no, there's some like. I'll talk.
Yes,
RTG.
yes. He talked to us about it. Yeah. It's terrible. He's in bad shape even now. It's just hard time starting yesterday. That means just kind of right.
And now it's your responsibility.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October 19th edition of the Lexington City Council. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to Dr. Losey's journalism class. And tell me again, it's News Writing 101. Is this not working? Can you pump me up, Jane? See if we can, there we go. Thank you, ma'am. Much better. Glad you all are here. And before call the meeting to order, would invite anyone who intends to speak tonight to please sign in on our sign-up sheet over here. And that's for our public hearing or for citizens' remarks and comments. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Again, and welcome you all. I will acknowledge Councilmember Chuck Smith is embracing parental duties and attending the Parents Weekend at Whitman College for his son. So we miss him this evening and hope he has safe travels and good time with family. Next item is if you all will please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda and had a request to move item 15.1 under new business to be part of the presentation or just after the presentation for 5.1, fourth quarter financial report. And unless there's an objection, we will move it to make it 5.2. And hearing no objection. Any other changes or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, we will approve the agenda with that modification and move right into proclamations. And if it pleases council, instead of stepping down, we don't have anyone here with Extra Mile Day organization to join us. So I'm going to read this proclamation from the dais here. This is a proclamation establishing November 1st, 2023 as Extra Mile Day in Lexington, Virginia. Whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Lexington, Virginia acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2023. Now, therefore, as mayor of Lexington, Virginia, I do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2023 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, and world a better place. Adopted this 19th day of October, 2023. Under my signature and Janie's as clerk. And Janie, if you'll share that with the Extra Mile America. And I wanted to take the opportunity to reflect over the past 2 years, folks that have served on our boards and commissions, and just call their names out as people that have gone the extra mile for our community in years past in their service, who have stepped off of boards and commissions. The Architectural Review Board in 2022, Chip Hansinger. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mary Harvey Halseth. The IDA, Industrial Development Authority, Buddy Derrick, Tammy Helwig, and Jake Adams. Planning Commission, Jamie Gooden, Nick Betts. Regional Library Board, Joseph Kales. Threshold, Crystal Vozo and Vicki Turner. In 2023, folks that served and left after their term expired on the ARB, Architectural Review Board, Robin LeBlanc, Elizabeth Tafe, Maury Service Authority, many, many years of service, I think maybe a couple decades, Ned Reister. Planning Commission, Blake Shester and Matt Tuckler. RARO, Scott Rogers, and very short term, Troy Hall. School Board, Molly Fox. Tree Board, Betty Beazle, and Vicki Turner on the electoral board for, again, many, many years of service on that, and previously on Threshold for her as well. So I uplift all of those folks and thank them for their service to the city of Lexington and for going the extra mile in their duties, serving on those boards and commissions, and encourage people as you find it in your heart to serve your community or this community to do so, going the extra mile each day. With that, I'd like to move on to item number 5, presentations, and call on the city manager for introduction of the fiscal year 2023 fourth quarter financial report.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to pass the ball to our finance director, Jennifer Bell.
Lucille Ball.
You can call me anything you like. Good evening. Thank you. And generally, I do like to go the extra mile and have a visual presentation, but unfortunately, this week wasn't what I had planned. So I will drone on with some numbers. Revenues in the general fund finished strong for FY23. Particular items of note are other local taxes, specifically meals and lodging taxes, which finished the year 31% and 50% ahead of budget respectively, for a total dollar amount of $737,000. Business license taxes also finished over budget with total collections of $819,000. FY23 building permits were also strong, with collections in excess of $194,000. As discussed in previous quarterly presentations, interest rates were much higher than budgeted in FY23. Total collections were $1,374,843, which is $1,114,843 over budget. We also see a large budget to actual increase in federal funds, as the city was able to recognize $4.8 million of our ARPA allocation in FY23. Expenses in the general fund for fiscal year 23 finished the year under budget overall. We did see a few overages within some functions, such as health, education, and welfare, due to increased services under the Child Services Act and Virginia Public Assistance Program. We also saw increases in leisure services due to increased lodging taxes collected. We owed the Virginia Horse Center a true-up at year end for their 2% share of the collections. And then, as noted in your council packets, I do want to point out that the non-departmental line appears to be significantly over budget. However, this will be rectified when we get to the budget amendment coming up later in the meeting. The two items of note here are the appropriated $1.7 million for the ladder truck purchase and the $2.3 million that council previously approved to be transferred to capital projects from funds related to our ARPA allocation. Before I move on to the other funds, any questions on the general fund I could answer?
Doesn't
Okay.
appear so. Plow on.
All right. The school board ended the year with a surplus of $167,362. This is due to higher than budgeted attendance from tuition paying students, additional funding related to the school lunch program and walk-in sales, as well as lower than expected health insurance premiums, excuse me. We have a special meeting next Thursday with the school board where they will provide a full report on their fiscal year 23. In the utility fund, expenses did exceed revenues for the year. However, included within the expenses are capital projects, which includes the Diamond Hill area project that is actually funded with a bond issue. So removing those costs, operating expenses were $5,651,969 for the year, which is less than the charges we collected for water and sewer use of $6,240,094. Within the equipment replacement fund, we did purchase and receive all of the approved items in FY23, with the exception of the new trash truck, which in my report to you, I had said would arrive in the fall, but earlier this week, we received an update that it's coming in January now. And we also had 2 replacement vehicles in our FY23 budget, and it was decided to defer those to future years, just based on the condition of the equipment. I'm not requesting any action from council this evening on these items. However, I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the FY23.
Mr. Ziegler.
In public safety, you noted that like the fire department was under budget. So I take it that like police was right on budget.
The police department will also will also be under budget once we do these allocations. What's showing them as looking like they're over budget is because they received that ARPA award at the end of the year. So they encumbered those funds, but we didn't yet appropriate them.
And do you have an estimate on potentially as far as our vacancy savings, if we could attribute a percentage of, you know, us being underneath our general fund expenses, what that might be, allocate, you know, how much of our vacancy savings might have contributed to that? Because we were understaffed in the police department most of the year. Public Works, we were often down a couple of positions. Because I know we try to budget as if we're full employment for the entire fiscal year.
Exactly.
And so just,
I don't have that
I
number
don't expect
offhand.
the answer right now.
I'll happily get it for you though.
Right, thanks.
Absolutely.
And then do you have any, I mean, you know, now that you've been with the city for a couple of years and you're looking at this, as you look at how much we relied on the interest earnings, and we are in the current fiscal year, and this will kind of, my question maybe will dovetail into the, you know, the presentation from RT. Is our new fiscal policy, if we adopt it, going to try to absorb more of that interest to remain in the capital fund project account, if you will, and not really bleed over to the general fund and in this current fiscal year, really boost our surplus?
So we are not recommending a change right now in how we allocate the interest. Still having it go to the general fund, except for the funds that are being invested on behalf of like the utility fund or some of the other funds for which we're the fiscal agent.
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. And we have item 5.2. I'll call the city manager for introduction of our guest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we do have Mr. RT Taylor with us, I'd like to thank the staff from Davenport, especially RT, for the work they've done helping us to revise the two policies that are before you this evening, and also for helping us put together the framework of the sustainable capital funding strategies that you've seen prior to this. And tonight, the purpose coming before you is to review the two policies, the fund balance policy and the debt service policy, to determine whether or not to adopt those. And we do recommend they be adopted. However, we don't necessarily need action tonight unless you'd like to just go ahead and move forward. They're in the form they can be adopted, or you can see them again 2 weeks from now and deal with them then. But I'm going to now pass it off first to Jennifer Bell, our finance director, and she's going to give a little more information. And then again, Mr. Taylor is here to back us both up.
So as the city manager said, the purpose of these updated policies are really to update our existing policies to better strategically manage the city financial assets. In addition, we're looking to create an analytical or decision-making tool to aid city council and city staff while preparing for funding large capital projects over an extended time frame. So within the two policies we're presenting to you, the major changes are, excuse me, within the fund balance policy, we're looking to increase to 40% our unassigned fund balance requirement. Currently, it's at 20%. And then within our debt policy, we have now included language to set the city's 10-year payout ratio to be no less than 50%. We also took this opportunity to clean up some language within the policies that may have been a little bit confusing or superfluous. And unless you have any specific questions for me, I'd be happy to invite RT Taylor to come up to review with you the proposed timeline for the next several quarters and answer any questions you may have of him.
Members of council, I have a question for Jen. Ms. Strong.
No, just to clarify, so this is basically a revision of some of the policies that we already had in place, because we did have some.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
And to be clear, the two pieces that Jen pointed out, changing from 20% to 40% to be a target policy, and then the other
the
debt
50%
50%.
payout ratio.
Bless you. Any other questions for Jen?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. RT, welcome back. Glad you're here.
Appreciate it. I believe all this was in your packet, so you have it in there. But I did bring extra copies just in case. As Jim and Jen both mentioned, tonight is really all the stuff that we've been working on in the past several months and presented to you in the past couple or few months. All of that was all the detail work as part of the sustainable capital funding plan. What you have before you are the two policies that you already had in place that have been amended or reflect the amendments and updates that we've talked through during those prior meetings. Again, just want to buttress our fund balance policy a bit. And we can live within those parameters and meet those parameters based on the 10-year plus, the decade look of the program we have developed for funding capital needs. And then that other policy, the 10-year payout, again, that's how much principal you're paying back within a given, within a 10-year period of time over the stretch of your term of your debt. There is some flexibility. We cleaned up a little bit to make sure that that is our hard target, so to speak, for the floor. We don't want to dip below that 50% minimum. However, should things evolve over time that require us to balance some pros and cons at some point, and we need to purposely and strategically dip below that, we've got the flexibility built into there, but we don't want to overdo it. And so that language has been cleaned up to do it in a prudent manner. So based on all of that and based on the prior discussions, at some point tonight or next meeting, just looking for formal acceptance or adoption of the new policies or revised policies, forgive me. And then that, of course, as we've talked about, that sort of sets the groundwork to be able to set the engagement with the rating agencies and start developing the credit materials to have those meetings at the appropriate time. And again, that will be asked by staff from you to give formal guidance that you want to move forward. So then again, as we talked about, we do have the city's utility analysis sort of in development. But again, because the Maury Service Authority is going through a similar capital and sustainable program that we're helping them on, a lot of that dovetails with the city's utility funds. So we are working through that with Maury Service Authority, should have that wrapped up before calendar year end and be able to come to you in the first quarter of next calendar year to show how that is impacting or will impact the city's utility pro forma for years to come. So all of that will be dovetailed in the first quarter of next calendar year. And then lastly, as we embark upon the general fund's sustainable capital strategic plan, there will be a funding next calendar year at some point when determined that we will move forward with and have a strategic plan of finance that goes along with that sustainable plan that we've created. So that we'll present that to you call it the first or second quarter of calendar year 24 before we move forward with the financing. And then after all of that is sort of wrapped up in the first half of calendar year 24, then we would move forward with a strategic plan of finance for any potential utility fund needs that are required. Any
Potential needs.
Potential needs, yes, sir. Correct.
When you're talking infrastructure, there are always needs. Members of council have any questions for RT? I'll just echo, this is intended and was on your agenda as informational item. But if you're comfortable with the recommendations and the amendments that we've been talking about for the past several months, if council wanted to take action this evening, a motion would be appropriate. But if you'd like to marinate on it until our next meeting, we will put on the agenda for consideration.
That's the only thing I would comment is, I don't think it changes anything the school board does, but it'd be nice to notify them, what we're looking at as an official policy as far as the any overages in the school fund balance.
I don't think that changes. This is already, again, the changes to these policies, if I understand correctly, is the 40% and the 50%. The school board already, that language is already in there. And
Is that language in there? I didn't know we really had any language as far as any surpluses for the school board, did we? I don't think we did.
Just our existing policy that we passed years ago for a period of time that has now
Right.
in theory
Right.
expired.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this
Okay.
policy update is specific to your unassigned fund balance in the general fund.
Okay. If we had.
Yeah.
Now if I can find it.
There is a section in there, which I think is what you're looking at, where
Right.
we talk about the school fund. We didn't make any changes to that section.
Okay, that's interesting because I don't know that anybody knows maybe that was there.
Right, as I read it, I don't want to admit it, but I will. It
Yeah.
was news to me as well, that those were the thresholds that were previously set. I think that we kind of allow them to do more than that,
Right.
but those are the minimums.
The policy that we put in place several years ago was for a finite period of time and it has since expired. So if this policy was in place prior to that policy, are we reverting to this?
If it expired, then it would just be an adoption of a new policy.
That's kind of where
Nick, I'm gonna ask you to speak. I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I was saying if it expired, then this would be adoption of a new policy because there would be no overlap.
Correct.
Yeah, I have no problem with what it says. I just
Right.
I think
didn't know we had it and I have no problem with anything that's written. It'd just be nice to let them know
Sure.
that there is some language regarding that.
my goal is just to keep to the calendar that we had. We didn't advertise a vote. I just would love to give the public 2 more
Sure.
weeks if they happen to have any questions, but also for RT to not force him to drive back here and offer the ability to remote in if there are any questions at that first meeting in November, if you'd want to, but because I do feel bad you having to, but
This is part of what we do and why we do it.
Yeah. Just wanted you to know that it was an option. We can certainly wait till the November meeting to work on considering it. Any other questions on the language? I'm sensing a question relative to the school policy. Ms. Strawn, you said you have no problem with it. We just need to let the school board know that we have this policy adopted.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why we even have the $75,000 number in there, but that's not a major part of this policy. But if we do have this, if it is included, we might as well amend it how we want. And
Right. I mean, my perception, the way I read it is that that's somewhat a contingency fund for them
right,
that we would allow them to hang on to. And they've had that over the years. The piece for the half of their capital to go into, or half of their surplus to go into a capital, that policy, I think, sunsetted, and that I don't know that ever.
right. And I don't think that should be in here. Right.
Correct.
I didn't know that if they had a surplus of less than $75,000, we don't talk to them about carrying it over to their fund. Is that how this reads?
That's an excellent question. The way I interpreted it was just whatever their surplus was at year end, we would allow them to request of council what they could do with it.
And that has always been the policy. And that's why I'm wondering, maybe we just take out the 75,000. I mean, is that
I'm happy to do that.
okay? This is
Okay.
the 75,000.
Use the microphone.
Zero.
Okay,
you're talking
okay,
about,
yeah,
yeah.
right. I would like to make that change.
Okay. I'll be happy to change that. And if it's helpful, I can also provide a red line between what we had and what we're proposing.
Sure.
If you can do that electronically, easy
Absolutely.
enough,
Mhm.
that would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the reason we look at our policies on occasion and update them. So thank you all for your questions, and RT, thank you for the good work of Davenport, your team, getting this far, and look forward to advancing the ball and ensuring the financial security for the citizens of Lexington.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us work with.
Yeah. And by all means, head on home. Thanks for being with us, and safe travels. Next item on the agenda, public hearings, item 6.1, request from the city of Lexington to adjust the property boundary line between 140 Evergreen Place and Evergreen Cemetery. Welcome, Arnie.
Good evening to you all. We do have a request. It's a preliminary subdivision, even though we're not subdividing anything. It's a boundary line adjustment. It falls underneath the subdivision heading. This is for the two properties at 140 and 108 Evergreen Place. The request is to add a 1.855 portion of 140 Evergreen Place to the Evergreen Cemetery. Bottom of the page, on the first page of your staff report, you see the outlines for the Evergreen Cemetery parcel, as well as the parcel that the city purchased from Dr. Knox. And again, the request is to shift the boundary line over, so the parcel that contains and retains the house will become a smaller parcel, and the cemetery parcel itself will increase in size. If you flip over to the next page, on page 2 of your staff report, you will see the green shaded portion. That is the area that is proposed to shift over to the Evergreen Cemetery parcel. Staff does make a recommendation in favor, as did the Planning Commission after holding a public hearing on September 28th. That is a unanimous recommendation from Planning Commission, and their minutes, or at least their draft minutes from their September 28th meeting, are included in your packet. In response to the advertisements and the postings and the adjacent property owner notices, we received no phone calls, no comments on this particular item. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Arnie. Members of council have any questions? It may be on this survey, but the lot, what will the quarter acre, half acre,
What's left for the smaller parcel,
that the house and parcel? Yeah.
it is on the bigger version, which is the last page of this section of the staff report. It is a 0.327 acre parcel.
Thank you. My old eyes can't,
It's difficult.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If no other questions for Arnie or from council, I'd like to open the public hearing and ask anyone who would like to speak to this matter. Please come forward. We didn't have anyone sign up, but is there anyone who would like to speak on the boundary line adjustment topic? Seeing no one at 7:29, I'll close the public hearing and ask for council's consideration.
Sure. I move to approve preliminary subdivision application PS 2023-05 for the adjustment of boundary lines between 140 Evergreen Place, tax map number 31-1-1, and Evergreen Cemetery, tax map number 25-1-9, in accordance with the plat showing boundary line adjustment of the lands of the city of Lexington, completed by Timmons Group as submitted by the applicant.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll give it to Marilyn.
Sounds good.
Roll call vote or any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Been quite some time that we've been talking about this stretch of property and very grateful. I hope all the citizens of Lexington are very grateful to Mr. Knox for selling it to us and being able to have some room to expand the Evergreen Cemetery. Good work by staff in cooperation with the neighbors. So thank you all very much. Next item is 6.2, public hearing on consideration of ordinance incorporating the budget amendments for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023. And I'll call on Jen. Back and better than ever.
Good evening again. I'll try to be brief and not belabor the numbers too much. A revenue adjustment in the amount of $4,802,345 is needed to reflect the ARPA funds recognized as revenue in FY 23. An appropriation is recommended of $2,387,911 to the Capital Projects Fund, with $2 million specifically earmarked for bridge repairs. You'll note this was previously approved by council at the February 17th, 2022 meeting. However, revenues weren't recognized until fiscal year 23. The city closed on the loan for the ladder truck in December of 2022, and delivery and the invoice payment was made in May of 2023. Tonight, I'm requesting an appropriation of $1,728,918 from the loan proceeds in the general fund to the equipment replacement fund. $85,272 is needed in recreation and leisure services to cover a true-up payment to the Virginia Horse Center at year end due to higher than budgeted lodging tax collections, an additional contribution to RARO due to greater than budgeted Lexington participation rates, and higher than budgeted maintenance costs at the municipal pool. Also, $126,893 is needed in health, education, and welfare to cover greater than expected services used under the Children's Services Act and Virginia Public Assistance. Savings within community development and general government administration are more than enough to cover the added expenses described for the recreation and leisure services and health, education, and welfare. In May, City Council approved support in the amount of $27,721.96 for the Hope House project from funds received from the opioid settlements. So tonight I'm requesting an appropriation in that amount, please. In June, the police department received a $2,500 donation from the Community Foundation for their Junior Police Academy summer camp. An appropriation is requested in that amount. Also in June, the police department was awarded a $157,000 ARPA grant from DCJS. An appropriation of this amount is also requested. Moving on to the school board, revenue adjustments are needed in charges for services for increased cafeteria sales and increased tuition payments. Another revenue adjustment is needed in federal programs due to additional funds received for CARES Act funding, Title I, and the National School Lunch Program. An appropriation of $168,479 is requested in operations and maintenance due to higher than budgeted costs in utilities, material costs, and fully reimbursable ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grant expenses. An appropriation of $31,844 is requested in cafeteria due to higher than expected food costs. Lastly, for the school fund, an appropriation of $39,426 is requested in federal programs. This is due to higher than anticipated expenses, which were offset by higher than budgeted federal funding under the various title programs for the schools. Within the utility fund, $39,610 is needed in administration due to higher than budgeted costs in wages, computer software, and postage. Savings within wastewater operations are sufficient to cover these increased costs. Within the equipment replacement fund, a revenue adjustment of the $1.7 million is needed to recognize the additional contribution from the general fund with an offsetting appropriation in the same amount for the purpose of the ladder truck. Lastly, within capital projects, a revenue adjustment of $2,387,911 is needed to recognize the additional contribution from the general fund. I recommend and ask council to approve incorporating these amendments following the public hearing.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions of council for Finance Director? Hearing none, thank you. Good work. Lots of moving parts, and that's a lot of postage from the utility fund. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for ordinance 2023-12, an ordinance that incorporates the budget amendments for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023. Don't believe anyone has signed up to speak, but is there anyone here who would like to speak to any of these amendments that are before council? Hearing none at 7:36, I will close the public hearing and ask for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2023-12.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, any discussion?
And I'll just highlight for everyone in the audience, in addition to all the numbers that our finance director just talked about, the ordinance that we approve, and we approve similar ordinances at times throughout the year. There's actually about 7 or 8 pages at the end of the ordinance that talk about all the fees the city charges for any number of services. For example, you can see that a parking ticket is $20. There's a whole page on parking offenses. There's pages about the fees for using our planning services. There's a page about the fees for utility services. There's a $50 fine for not wearing your helmet at the skating park. So I just point that out, that it was an ordinance that passes these budget amendments, but lots of folks in the city ignore the fact that there's 8 pages that are about the regular fees that the city might charge for services, and that's incorporated in this. So,
Very good.
education, it's free.
Any other comments from council?
And I mention that because I hear from people, they don't know what things cost,
Right.
and that's where they always are published.
It's always published. They don't realize that they're creating an expense for themselves. Good work. With that, no further discussion. As for a roll call vote, Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Betts,
Aye.
Ms. Alexander. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to Finance Director for keeping the beans counted for us. Next item, 7.1, consideration of minutes. They were included in your packet. Are there any observations, changes? Unless there's an objection, we will approve those as presented, and thank you, Janie, for your good work. Next item is citizens' remarks and comments. And we do have one individual signed up, and you didn't have to sign up to speak, but I'd like to call on Janice Friend to address council. Welcome, Janice. Thanks for being with us.
Hello, I'm Janice Friend. My address is 102 Rebel Ridge Road, and I'm coming to give you an informal update on the tree board, which I am now the chair of. As many of you know, our beloved Betty Peasel retired from the tree board this summer. I was originally intending to ask that you all put out a call for a replacement, but it turns out we've already had a wonderful person express their interest, so that is already taken care of. I will say that, of course, our meetings are open to any community member who is interested in more involvement with trees and keeping our city green and beautiful. We meet every other month at City Hall, and please contact Jenny Hostetter if you need to get in touch with me about that. Our updates are that the Friends of Woods Creek group has started clearing the invasives from the side of the Woods Creek Trail. They are planning to eventually go all the way down to Jordan's Point. At our last meeting, the Miller House Museum board came to request specifically that some of the stone-faced mill race be beautified in conjunction with the Jordan's Point Renewal Project, and the Friends of Wood Creek are intending to work with Public Works, especially to clear some of the poison ivy that has been growing down those banks and removing some of the trees that are threatening its structural integrity. Along with the Rockbridge Area Conservation Council and again, Public Works, I'm planning to do some live staking to shore up some of the banks that have become exposed following the dam coming down. So this spring we'll be putting together a small community effort to reinforce that and, preserve that lovely natural area. I'd also like to just say that we very much appreciate Patrick Madigan's collaboration and efforts and his receptiveness to our feedback on the landscaping and tree conservation at Jordan's Point. For example, Louise Finger from DNR is coming to help deal with the Route 11 facing side of the bank, which has some serious erosion issues going on. They're planning to put in some permeable paving when the boat ramp area gets redone, and we've been consulting on appropriate understory species to eventually restore the away from the city side of the bank. So those are our tree board updates, and thank you all for your support as well.
Thank you for being with us, and thank you for, please take our greetings to the tree board and our thanks for the good work that they do. Can't recall exactly the number of years that we have been Tree City USA. So thank you for that. And then also for your personal participation in the Arbor Day plantings that we've had throughout the year. So good work, and thank you for being with us. And we do have an application for the tree board, and I'll be hope to bring that name forward at our next meeting. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? Mary Ellen, come join us.
Good evening, City Council. I am Mary Ellen Cook. I live at 4 North Lewis Street, and I am here just to make mention that I am a regular attendee at your City Council meetings, and it seems like from my notebook, it was back in May of this year that the issue of the structure at 201 North Randolph Street was put on an unfinished business item. My notes, my handwritten notes say there was a letter of violation, comma, no delays, comma, city will enforce the code, comma, 60 days. That's what my notes said. And we are beyond the 60 days. As I look at tonight's agenda, it shows that, yes, just like in many of the previous meetings, 201 North Randolph Street shows up on the item of unfinished business, and it allows for a comment that says this is staff reporting item only and requires no action from City Council at this time. And I think I'm just preparing City Council for a renewal of interest in at what point City Council will require some action regarding this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Appreciate you being with us and reminding us of those passwords, and encourage you to seek out the city manager or be available for him to brief you on, and there's a briefing this evening as it is on our agenda. So thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? David, come on up. Your timing is impeccable. If you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is David Allen Wells, and I live on 219 Diamond Street here in Lexington, Virginia. And first off, since I'm here, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of Woods Creek Run for the Kids for all the times you've supported us, because it's been very productive and we've helped some kids out. So thank you. I really appreciate that. But I'm here on a personal matter. I was given a Special Enforcement Division letter about weeds and debris on my property at 219 Diamond Street. For the past 3 summers since I bought the house and cleared out the jungle that it was, I worked hard to build vegetable, fruit, and herb, as well as flower gardens. And with the time that I have as a single father. And this time of year, you know, your tomatoes are dying back, everything. I've already taken in a lot of, I winterize my peppers because I love peppers. They do well in the winter. But anyway, I'm already working on getting my garden situated. Of course, things are dying back, but I'm still getting some tomatoes. And so I'm always in a process of cleaning back, and it's gonna, when the first frost comes, it's gonna be clean out anyway. But I have a grievance on this. Doesn't make sense, because what I have read in the code, my vegetation isn't weeds, and the tomatoes are definitely more than 10 inches long, but tomatoes not a weed in my book, nor are the flowers, which are seeds of my mom's seeds going back to generations. They actually could go back as far as 100 years. So anyway, I was just going to bring that before you all and see what I can do. I've been in touch with the officer Turner. He's a great guy. He's just going along with some complaints that he was given. And he said he had something else to give me tomorrow, but I just kind of wanted to get out there. I have several people in my ball court. They love that I have a green area. They love that I'm attracting the pollinators and whatnot. And my neighbors love that I give them produce. So just kind of wanted to throw out there to see what I can do. And is there something that I don't know that I'm violating? So that's all.
Very good. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And as a way of process, we, during citizens' remarks and comments, listen, and we don't respond to citizens' comments at this time. Direct city staff to follow up as necessary, and certainly with the summons, there's staff to work with you on that piece. But neighbors complain. Some of your neighbors apparently aren't thrilled with your garden. So, yeah. Yeah. Right. Navigate them. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? For all you students, it's your moment to shine. You can tell Dr. Losi you made comments. Hearing none, we'll close the citizen remarks and comments and go to unfinished business. And I'll call on the city manager for an update.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems timely to respond to the issue on 201 North Randolph Street. The owner of the property has procured a contractor who has gotten his permit for the demolition of the house, and he intends to start work next week. So it's maybe taken a little longer than some of us would have liked, but it's pretty tough sometimes to move these issues forward a lot faster than has occurred. It's certainly not 7 years in the future. So we've made good progress. I do believe that work will start, and we will still be monitoring it. So that's what I can share with City Council this evening and the public.
Thank you, sir. Members of council have any questions?
Just say good job and for working with the property owners to get that resolved and thank you and staff for your work on that.
Next item on the agenda, reports and commissions, board commissions, Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Nothing much to update. We had our meeting 2 Mondays ago. No, last Tuesday. Think about it because we're closed on the 9th and standard operating procedure for our business and things are progressing. We did have an update on the new equipment. I think it was about 700 and I can't remember the dollar amount, but the large track loader, the new one's in and being utilized and working very well. Staff was thrilled to have new equipment to work with. Main Street, Lexington, I'm not sure of any update from Mr. Smith, but go straight to Planning Commission.
Thank you. And happy 10-year anniversary to Main Street Lexington. That was a
Yes.
fun celebration, and to see their list of accomplishments it's very impressive. So I hope people look for that on social media. Planning Commission met last week on Thursday, October 12th, and we had 2 items of business. First was a application for a certificate of appropriateness for new signage for Lewis Gale on Nelson Street. They brought up a couple signs. On one sign that will be placed on the ground in front on Nelson Street, we asked that they come back with some more designs that incorporate brick. And later we had a discussion on, do we actually have a standard on Nelson Street? Has there ever been any guidelines that signs are supposed to have brick? We don't have any, it's not in our ordinance at all. So we're going to do a little research on that as well, but we wanted to see some further proposals, so they'll come back at the next meeting. And then we had our public comment on our zoning ordinance for accessory dwelling units. And we only had 1 comment, and it was really just to say good work and that they were surprised that the realtors hadn't responded to the ordinance. And so we made some minor adjustments to clarify a few things and then approved those revisions. And so should come to us in November, I would expect. The second meeting in November. And then we talked about our schedule and you had mentioned last time cottage housing, and that will be one of the first things we work on in the new year. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Strong. Any questions from council? Hearing none, Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
Yes, sir. The application process for round 6 of the tourism sponsorships opened on October 5th, 2023 and closes November 5th, 2023. There's $10,000 of available funding in round 6. Award announcements will be made during the last week of November 2023, and award distribution will take place the last week of December 2023. And again, the application process closes November 5th, 2023. The Rockbridge Regional Tourism Board has begun to discuss whether a facilities needs assessment is necessary, and if so, how will that assessment occur? And then finally, the interview process has begun for the Director of Tourism position. Some interviews were conducted and the hiring process is still ongoing.
Very good. The needs assessment on properties for perhaps moving.
For the visitor centers to see if, do we need that amount of space? Is the space being utilized effectively? Is the current location where we want to stay? I believe the lease is up in early 2025. So we're just trying to decide, what, if anything, we need to do in preparation to make a decision on that moving
Very
forward.
good.
Yes, sir.
Please keep us posted. Personally love the location and parking all works very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
No report.
Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
No report.
Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Minor report.
Fair enough.
The Maury Service Authority has not met since we had our last meeting, and there's no new information because of that. The MSA board is scheduled to meet here in this room 5 o'clock this coming Tuesday. And so at that point, there should be some good information as a result of that. So I look forward to that meeting and reporting to council at our subsequent meeting. Other than that, no report.
Thank you, sir. That is certainly a minor report. Next item is the mayor's report. I don't have much to report. I do want to echo Ms. Strawn's observation of the Main Street Lexington, the great celebration they had celebrating their 10 years, and no way to name all the people, but all the folks that were there and all the folks that have contributed to the success of Main Street Lexington, especially the founders who some who have left us, but their legacy and their energy continues on, and encourage all citizens and students alike to find a place to work with Main Street Lexington, because there are lots of volunteer opportunities and it's a great organization. So very, very proud of the work that they have done and will be doing. And along those same lines, wanted to alert council that been contacted by Main Street Lexington Courthouse Square Update Committee. And I've asked, and Leslie Strawn has accepted to be representative for council as Main Street Lexington, or this committee as a part of Main Street Lexington, with Jesse Lyons as chair and Rebecca Logan as vice chair, to reimagine the space that is Courthouse Square there between the old courthouse and the Hess & Co. First National Bank building. So thank you, Ms. Strawn, for your pending service. And as I mentioned before, anticipate bringing forward name at our next meeting for the tree board as we work to round out and fill the boards and commissions. And unless there are any questions, that's all I have for this evening. Call on city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sometimes it feels like I can't draw this back close enough to me, but I guess you can hear, so that's good. You all recall that City of Lexington worked with Buena Vista, Rockbridge County, and the Community Foundation to start a program called Hope House for those who are suffering from opioid and substance abuse dependency. And we just recently signed the operating agreement with the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority so that we could receive those state funds. That is, all three communities, the two city managers, county administrator, and Ms. Turner signed that agreement. So the state will begin to transfer those funds to us for that purpose, and we can begin operations. As you recall, the city of Buena Vista is the fiscal agent for that entity. So it's moving slowly forward. You heard from one of our citizens that the Public Works Department is beginning some work on Jordan's Point Park on some of the areas of the riverbank that need to be stabilized. And they're going to be working on first the east end of the island where there is some significant erosion, or the bank is falling in, removing some of that soil where it's been undercut, and moving that soil to the west end of the island where there's also another area that's been eroded over time, and to make repairs to both ends of the island in those areas of the bank. And that should be happening in the next week or so. Last week, we were notified about some individuals who had been walking their dog in Jordan's Point Park, and they thought their dogs became sick because of some substance in the park. They called me, and staff checked on that. There were no chemical applications, no fertilizing, no weed killer, anything of that nature that we could find. We checked for dead animals, other substances. So, in fact, even called the veterinarian where one of the dogs was treated, and they said they weren't sure that there was anything unusual, but just as an FYI, some people did indicate their dogs may have gotten sick in the park and they were concerned. Have taken no further steps since then. A little update on the police department. With their other WNL cohorts that are here tonight, we had some WNL students who reporters who interviewed some of our officers about compensation levels and current staffing in the police department. In areas of training, Lieutenant Padgett attended a session on updated accreditation standards. Corporal Dreeland attended animal control recertification training, and Detective Lewis and Corporals Hartbarger and Haston attended death investigation training, a macabre subject, but necessary sometimes. Chief Green participated on the Curriculum Advisory Committee for Law Enforcement Studies at Mountain Gateway Community College, and also attended the Virginia Crime Control Commission as part of the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police representation. In the fire department, staff performed a fire prevention week exercise at Central Elementary School, And they also conducted a Fire Prevention Week public education event at Lowe's. The department hosted a regional emergency vehicle operators class, EVOC, which provided teaching and certification on basic emergency vehicle driving, and more staff were trained on advanced operations for the new tower truck. Department staff participated in a building orientation at Modine, and I've mentioned that to you before. And the reality is, in some of those large facilities, businesses, and otherwise in the community, the fire department likes to go in before an emergency and see what's in that building. You know, what are the areas they have to deal with, hallways, empty spaces, equipment, et cetera, so that if something does happen, if they have to fight a fire or react to an emergency, they've got a little bit of an idea of what they're going to face when they go in the building. They're a little bit more complex, of course, than most of our homes. The department responded to a restaurant on North Lee Highway where there are very high levels of carbon monoxide due to poorly operating appliances. And of course, they then ventilated that structure and make sure no further harm was caused to anybody. There was no harm. To follow up on the mayor's comments, County Administrator Spencer Suter and I received a letter from Jesse Lyons working with Main Street Lexington on the old courthouse square. And one of the requests, or the primary request, aside from just cooperating as two local governments in our community, was for us to consider the county transferring the small parcel that the Veterans Memorial is on to the city, so there would be one property owner of the land in the square. I will say that the county administrator, Mr. Suter, is bringing this to his board for informational purposes this coming Monday. And then I believe the Main Street Committee would like us to act formally to make arrangements perhaps for the county again to transfer this property. I don't foresee any difficulties at our end. We are equipped, of course, to maintain the property that we have there. So it makes some sense to have one entity maintain it all. So that's all I have, unless there are any more questions from City Council.
Thanks, sir. Members of council have any questions? Mr. Alligood.
Just an observation. If we could swap our Morris Creek Dam for the county property, maybe we call it an even swap.
I can take that up with Mr. Suter.
Any other questions for the city manager? Hearing none, I'll move to the report from the city attorney.
I'll try to keep up with the short reports this evening, Mr. Mayor. Over the last couple of weeks, worked on some Freedom of Information Act requests for the police department and the school system. Completed some stormwater utility research for Patrick Madigan. Finished some research on some matters we've discussed in closed meeting, which I may bring up with you later, time permitting, this evening. And that's kind of what I've been working on the last couple of weeks. So.
Very good. Members of council.
Look like you have a.
Yeah, what was the freedom of information?
Oh, just some requests that the police department gets a fair number of them, and Lieutenant Paget often reaches out to me to ask some
Okay.
questions. And I have had some for the school board as well. They've had some requests for information. I've worked with the superintendent and Nathan Straub for some electronic records to respond to those requests.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jeremy. We do have the new business was moved to earlier, so no additional new business, and we do have a closed meeting scheduled. Ms. Alexander will read us into that momentarily. There are two topics. One, for city council to discuss some of the candidates that as we move forward with our city manager search, and then also negotiations related to services for the city, an agency of the city.
And some legal issues associated with that.
And some legal issues. It'll all be read in just a minute, but those are the two items in which we're going into choosing to go into closed session. But I want to thank everyone for being here, and for Dr. Losey's class, if you have questions, our city website has all the city council members' contact information, so feel free to look them up for questions. And when we come out of closed session, I do not anticipate there'll be any action other than adjournment when we finish. But thank you all for being here. And Ms. Alexander, if you'll read us in, please.
This is a motion for a closed meeting. I move that that the city council and the city of Lexington convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel pertaining to probable litigation where such consultation in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's litigating posture. Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of discussing and considering candidates for the position of city manager and for the purpose of discussing the assignment of the city's appointee to the 911 board. Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed by city council regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice, and Virginia Code 2.2-3711A6 for discussion of the investment of public funds in the 911 center where competition or bargaining is involved and where, if made public initially, the city's financial interest would be adversely affected.
Second.
Thank you, David, for the second. This needs a roll call vote. Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Mr. Sigler?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And Mr. Friedman, there you are. Thank you. We can now go into closed session. See you.